For my current event, I decided to talk about the pandemic's effect on the diabetes crisis and how it has worsened it across the world. The article I chose to cover is from Routers.com and it's titled, How the Pandemic Laid Bare America's Diabetes Crisis. And this article is quite long, but it discusses the issues of the diabetes crisis in America and how COVID-19 has worsened it greatly. In 2020, the deaths of diabetes rose by 17% compared to 2019. And we have over a million Americans struggling to keep their diabetes under control. And when the pandemic hit, it worsened it than we could have ever imagined. And the article states that COVID-19 has torn a particularly lethal path through the 1 in 10 Americans with diabetes, including the many who never caught the virus. And that's because when the pandemic hit, people with the chronic disease were already in worse shape than years. Over 34 million people in the U.S. have diabetes, and it costs us $234 billion each year to treat them. This article showcased real-life people and their struggles throughout the pandemic, such as Kate Herron and John Cupo. The impact of this issue, health professionals and scientists noticed that really early on, many COVID-19 patients also had diabetes. The article states that the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention cites research showing that 40% or more of the people who died from COVID-19 also had diabetes. But this number doesn't depict all the other deaths of the people who never caught the virus, but due to isolation and under no hospital beds, they died due to complications of diabetes. And despite the billions of dollars spent on new treatments, the prognosis for people with diabetes has been getting worse as the number of patients with the disease has increased, especially among younger people. Well, I chose this article because it included a real-life example that really struck hard with me, and it really opened my eyes to how scary this disease truly is. The article discusses one story of Kate Herron. She's a 42-year-old woman with diabetes who lived alone during the pandemic along with her 2 rescue dogs. Kate had type 2 diabetes, and she was among the millions of Americans with the disease that struggled during the pandemic. Her problems arose from government-subsidized medical insurance and doctors routinely rejecting her Medicaid plan. She also repeatedly ran out of her test strips she needed to manage her insulin levels. During the pandemic, she cycled in and out of the emergency room with high blood sugar levels. And when the pandemic hit, she was living alone. She barely left her apartment, so she stopped going in for her regular lab tests. And she also had a harder time getting her medical supplies. So her health deteriorated even further, and on December 15th, 2020, she was found dead on her bathroom floor after her best friend called 911. The coroner attributed to a heart attack that killed her due to complications of her type 2 diabetes. This crisis has been going on far too long with little progress made, and if we don't do something soon, then there might be more stories just like hers. I was very shocked by this article when I first read it, and I was honestly heartbroken. Hearing her story really opened my eyes to how serious this is and how scary it can be. I feel like diabetes is so common now that we forget truly how hard it is to manage. And when insulin is something very necessary for humans to survive, and it is becoming so unaffordable. And I think people were hit truly so hard by the pandemic because people were losing their jobs. They could no longer pay for their health insurance, and they could no longer pay for unexpected hospital visits. And so with the pandemic, it has only made the diabetes crisis worsen. And I think we need to make this one of our main priorities as a nation and try to manage it more than we are now. Because with the amount of Americans infected, you would think that we as a country would be doing everything we can. Yeah.